So, I'm sure everyone here knows who Joe Rogan is. He's one of the biggest podcasters in the entire world. When he moved over to Spotify, it cost Spotify an approximate $200 million for the deal to go through. And I think this entire video is going to show why it costs that kind of money. Only 18% of the people watching this video right now are actually subscribed to the channel. Don't be part of the 81%. Subscribe to the channel, you have nothing to lose. And recent news about the $200 million deal is showing that Spotify is terrified of YouTube. So it recently came out that Spotify executives were negotiating the Joe Rogan deal in 2020 to make his podcast exclusive to its service. It ran into issues and what to do about YouTube. Pretty much in this article it says that Spotify insiders think the biggest competition they have is not Apple Music but YouTube itself. And I think we should all really step back and think about how big of a deal that is. YouTube is a bigger threat to Spotify than Apple Music. You know, Apple, the $1 trillion company, I don't know if they were valued at $1 trillion or something like that. They were valued super high. They have all this money, and Apple is one of the biggest companies of all time. Spotify is still more worried about YouTube's influence on them. Rogan had been posting full episodes of his show to his YouTube channels and making big money on the platform from his share of the ad revenue. As the sides tussled over the size of the deal, a major reason it reached such an eye-popping large sum of over $200 million for around 3 years. Oh my gosh, can you guys imagine? That's what, $75 million a year? That's not too shabby. 75, yeah, it's a little less than that. I don't know, 65. Guy like me not good at math, but oh my gosh, that is like $60 million a year, a little over that, I think. And can you imagine getting paid $60 million a year to talk with people on a podcast? That is crazy amount of money. He'll be set for life after this. Not even life, he'll be set for generations. But yeah, over $200 million for around 3 years of exclusivity, according to the New York Times. It was because Spotify had to compensate the podcaster for the YouTube money and audience he'd be losing out on, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. The Rogan deal also led to Spotify scrambling to create a video player on their app so Rogan had a place to post videos of his show and keep his former YouTube audience happy, the people said. And yeah, that's another big thing. I don't know about you guys, but I really enjoy the visual part of audio podcasts, which I know sure sounds crazy, but when I watch podcasts, I definitely prefer to listen to them while I'm watching a video instead of listening just with my ears. But that's just me. It is pretty impressive that the deal was so big that Spotify literally had to make a video player on their app just for Joe Rogan. The details of YouTube's role on the podcast deal, which haven't been previously reported, illustrate a surprising development in the podcasting world over the past few years. YouTube has become a juggernaut. 2 recent surveys, one from Communist Media and the other by Voices, showed that YouTube was the most frequently used podcasting platform, edging out Spotify and Apple podcasting apps. Even more surprising, the video service has done next to nothing to make it happen. And yeah, that is honestly an insane statistic to have. When you think about podcast and audio form content, you think of, Spotify and Apple, but you know what, the study shows that the most frequent used podcast platform was YouTube, a place that most people go to for visual content. I think that's super surprising, especially because over the last few months, YouTube has actually made a dedicated platform part of their platform for podcasts, so it looks like they continue to move on. I think this is a super interesting time in YouTube's history because they're etching out into all these forms of content, and they have the money, they have the resources. They're one of the biggest companies backed up by Google, which I believe is the biggest internet company, if I'm not mistaken, and they're just crushing it on all fronts. They're doing long form, they're doing short form, they're doing podcasts. You know what, they're really crushing the content game, and I think YouTube is for sure becoming one of the biggest one-stop shops for content for a lot of people. And I think that's another surprising thing is they haven't done anything to really promote podcasts. People just put their podcast on YouTube because, you know, there's an audience and there's growability. And that's all it took, you know, growability and an audience for YouTube to maintain. And now they're the most frequently used podcasting platform. And I definitely think once this 3 years is up at the end of 2023, I do believe Joe Rogan will go back onto YouTube because people like the visual thing. I mean, he was getting millions of views on YouTube when he was still promoting it and posting YouTube videos exclusively for his podcast. I definitely think that YouTube's game is upping it. Now, YouTube's not perfect. They have plenty of problems themselves, and I definitely think if they want to continue these longevity forms of content, whether it's short form or podcasting, they need to fix some of their issues. Like, you know what, I think making a separate tab and a separate place for people that are interested in podcasts is great, but they need to do separate things for shorts too. Like, yeah, they have a tab for it and that's great and all, but people can't monetize it, and it's harder to, you know, make people who watch your shorts also watch your long form content, which is the pinnacle of, you know, monetization for YouTube. Now, obviously it doesn't really matter too much to me. I'm not making money out of this, but you know what, I definitely think they promote content that's monetized because, you know, it makes them money. And if they need to step up, and they have actually been recently stepping up with the short form content that promotes long form content. So that's a stop in the right direction, but they definitely need to do more to fix the little crinks in their system to continue to make YouTube, you know, this powerhouse of content. I really do think that's what it's becoming now. I don't know about you guys. I'm actually curious to see what you guys have to say in the comments. If you guys prefer video podcast or audio podcast. I've tried to listen to a couple podcasts on my Spotify while I'm like playing video games, and I can't do it. It's not my thing. And I can't say I'm a huge podcast fan, but I mean, podcasts on YouTube are huge. I think the two biggest podcasts are the Joe Rogan Experience, which was exclusively on YouTube for a long time, and his catalog is still there for people who are interested, and then Impulsive by Logan Paul, and he pretty much he doesn't exclusively upload his content on YouTube, but he's one of the biggest podcasts on the entire platform, and most of his videos on his YouTube for his podcast get a crazy amount of views. And so I definitely think if YouTube continues this game of, you know, branching out into all forms of content, they'll definitely become a powerhouse because they have the money, they have the people, and you know what, I think YouTube has the will to beat out all of its competition. I definitely think Spotify should be worried about this, and instead of giving Joe Rogan $200 million, I'm not sure the kind of return on investment they're getting on that, but it would probably be smarter to give a couple of people like a few $1 million to exclusively stream on Spotify than to give these major deals, which I'm not sure about the return on investment. I guess we'll see when the deal's done, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.